Alright, how to clean your bearings in a Duncan Bearing King. The bearings are inside. There are two bearings, so you need to open the top. There's an inner bearing, which you might be able to see in there, and then there's one right above this tip here. You have to knock the whole tip out. You have to hit it on that little part right there. I use this a lot. It's just a piece of rubber taped to a PVC pipe. That's my hole. It holds the top. Here's a little thing that a guy named Josephus, well, that's his screen name anyway. He made this for me. He makes them for himself too. It's just got a little hole so that it'll center itself right on that plastic part, and then you can tap out the tip. Oops. There. Okay. And you'll see that there's still a bearing inside the top, and then there's one still on the tip. So those are your two bearings. These are just the standard Duncan size bearings that are in most Duncan yo-yos. This one you just throw into some mineral spirits. If you're a kid, might want to get your parents' permission. This stuff is flammable, so be careful. And I use a little jar like this that's leak proof, and you just throw that in there, and you have to throw the other bearing in there to get that out. You use that same tool and just tap it out. There it is, and you throw it in there. Different people clean their bearings different ways. I just put in there, shake it for a little bit, and take them out. Some people leave it overnight, etc. Also, people differ in how they treat the bearings after they're done. Sometimes I just don't do anything. I just dry them off and then put them back in the top. I think most people will tell you that you should lube it a little bit. Use some bearing lube. This is from Yo-Yo Jam. Because if the bearings run too hard, too dry, they'll start to degrade, sort of decay inside somehow. Anyway, you just put a little bit of drop in there after you get your bearings dry. This one I've already taken the shield off of one side. Here's the side with the shield. Wait, yeah, there's a shield on that side and not on that side. To take a shield off, I use a pencil to kind of hold the bearing, and you use a little pin, and it's just a C-clip that you're trying to pop out, and you sort of poke it in there until you find some resistance, and then pop it out. Now sometimes that's easier said than done. I can get that one out. So anyway, it looks like this. That little C-clip goes right in there, and that's what holds the shield in. I usually pop them out and leave them out. I can't get this one out, but don't worry about it. So after you clean them, you put a little bit of bearing lube on it. Just one drop. Should do it. And then same on this one here. And then you got to get the bearings back in the top. To do that, you can either just sort of pop that in there. Sometimes it'll press right in there on some of them, but usually it fit in pretty tight. I need something that's as wide as the outer race of the bearing, so that so that you're not pounding on the inside of the bearing. The inner race, you want to pound on the outside, and then there you go. Another way to do it is to use a bolt, usually with a wing nut head on this bolt, so that you can hold it in there like that. Put it in there. You put a washer and another wing nut, and then you squeeze, and then you just sort of tighten that wing nut. And you tighten that wing nut, you hold this inside if that's a wing nut, and you just squeeze it into place. That's probably the best way to do it. So anyway, after that's seated in there real good, after that bearing is seated in there, you can just pop this bearing in place. It just takes a little bit of force. Sometimes you'll have to tap it on the table there. As long as there's not a big gap right there, you're in business. And make sure that bearing inside hasn't pushed out. That little O-ring that's inside that is on that shaft is what keeps the whole thing together. And you got clean bearings. And now you got a spinning Bearing King. Yay!